Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Safe House, brought to you by the SafeHouse Initiative. I'm Jeff Edwards, co-chair of the SafeHouse Initiative, and your host for today's podcast. Cybersecurity is a scary place when you hear all these terms bandied about every day and everything you read, compliance, certification, guidance, NIST, ISO. It blurs after a while. It's overwhelming. And what do I do back in my organization? So at the Safe House, you know us for trying to take a subject and break it down to where it's not so scary and it's understandable in bite-sized chunks and building blocks, if you will. And today we're very fortunate to have the head of Asia Pacific for their channels program at Lansweeper, James Hatcher. James, welcome to the Safe House.
Good morning, good day, good evening. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Wait a minute. You sound like you have a bit of an accent. Where are you from, James?
Well, I was born in the U.S., but studied electronic engineering, and by chance was offered a job in Taiwan when I was 21. So I've spent most of my career living and working in Australasia, so Australia and or Asia. And I've been fortunate. I've always been in IT, but I've worked on both the hardware and the software side. So I've seen, the evolution of the whole IT industry through my career. I cut my teeth working with Six Sigma engineers from Motorola, trying to help design and deploy RFID tracking systems in factories. So it's always been about best practice, optimal efficiency, and trying to do things right. Started off with what is best practice? How do you reduce error and optimize efficiency? That's kind of the perspective I used in everything I tackled in my career and in my personal life. And so cybersecurity obviously is the big thing in the world right now. I've been in this industry for so long. I've seen the cybersecurity risk as it's grown. I've been involved in trying to do risk management for most of my career, whether it was on the physical IT hardware or the software side. And that's why I really appreciate the Safe House Initiative. I think trying to simplify things, make it bite-sized, make it simple and understandable is exactly what people need in the industry. There are frameworks, there are certifications, and there are regulations. And so those are kind of the three categories. And that's probably a good place to touch on NIST. So NIST is a cybersecurity framework, sometimes called the NIST CSF. And it's designed for businesses and organizations to assess risks. Now, so that's a framework. You don't have to you don't have to have an auditor come in to try to apply the NIST framework. And the Safe House Initiative is even trying to help simplify NIST a bit, which is great because it does have some complexity to it. But then an example, that's a framework. Then an example of a certification is ISO 27001. So ISO 27001. And ISO 27001 is it details specific security controls, internal policies, and standardized protocols to protect your data from misuse or theft. And that is a certification. So you go to any of the big five, any cybersecurity consulting firm and say, I want to get ISO 27001 certified. They will take you through the processes to ensure you're compliant. And then they do an audit and they issue an actual certification to say that you are compliant with ISO 27001. And so ISO 27001 is to help organizations manage and protect their information assets. Now, what is an information asset? It's any valuable piece of information that an organization owns, controls, or uses to support its operations. And so that's every bit of software you've got in the company. But then they don't just talk about the software. It's like, how do you store that software? Where does it live? How do you protect it? And if that software is on your laptop, are you patching your laptop? Are you maintaining that laptop? And this is where it leads back into the ITAM component, because the big deal now is, if I have let's go old school. If I have a server and it's running Windows OT, which is a long time ago, there's no more support for that. And actually, there's a very relevant issue coming up now for a lot of end users, is Windows 11. So Windows 10 support, Microsoft has said that after a cutoff date, if you don't move to Windows 11, you're going to have to pay for them to support Windows 10, 10.x. So now the ITAM organization is responsible for figuring out every laptop in the company that, because either the hardware is too old or the memory's not enough or whatever the problem is, what machines can upgrade to 11, what machines cannot upgrade to 11, and then you have to do the cost-benefit analysis of, do we pay Microsoft to support Windows 10, or do we upgrade everything and move to Windows 11? And that actually has a cybersecurity risk component, because if you're not on a version that is supported, if there's a hack, there's no patch. You're vulnerable.
Yep. Interesting. So now you have the framework, right? Which NIST is one of those. And the first one of the controls they recommend is identification. Is this where the ITAM work that's been previously done come into play, so you can take an inventory of what you have, not just of the what's in ITAM, but everything and release levels, things of that nature? Is that where this comes together?
Absolutely. And the perfect segue to that, because it's very simple. We in ITAM, this is talked about probably too much, but for the general audience, it comes down to, you can't manage what you don't know, and you can't protect what you don't know. And what that means is, you can't manage assets that you don't know are on your network. And the issue nowadays is, network is not just your physical network in the company. It's who's using a VPN to tunnel into the company because they're working from home, who's brought their mobile phone into the office and logged onto the company Wi-Fi when they're supposed to be on the guest Wi-Fi, and then in the cloud. So if you have developers and operations using servers, virtual machines that they're spinning up in the cloud, those have connections and relationships back into your organization. So you need to know everything, whether it's physical or virtual, that is internet enabled or network enabled, that touches your organization. And that's ITAM. ITAM tracks those assets and manages those assets. And they've had to do it for years because, software compliance. Microsoft says, we think you're using too many Microsoft server licenses. We'd like to come in and do an audit, and thank you very much. Here's the bill for your non-compliance. So ITAM's responsible for software compliance, but that compliance component fits beautifully into a cybersecurity risk management profile. ITAM guys are kind of the unsung heroes. Yeah. They're the ones that it's like your plumbing. As long as it works, you don't care. But the minute that the sink backs up or the toilet backs up, you notice your plumbing very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And so, ITAM guys are the ones that keep the laptops running, keep the servers going, keep the Wi-Fi going. And so, of course, if the Wi-Fi is slow in the office, those are the guys that are the ones that are responsible for
it. That is great. Now with COVID, did that kind of make this worse? Did it bring a lot of light to bear on this whole area that of all the devices that are going to be connected? Did that cause a problem in the industry?
So absolutely. When everyone started working from home, it's like, okay, yeah, now I need to do everything I did in the office, but I need to do it from home. How do I do that? So it had a big impact, and it did force a lot of people that would use a desktop machine in the office. All of a sudden, there was a shortage of laptops because there weren't enough machines out in the market to cover this quick transition to a work from home environment. Now, yes, people are coming back in again, but it's more of okay, I'm in the office 2-3 days a week. I'm still working from home. Just a little story there. one of the big problems that the ITAM guys had was that when people went to go work from home, they took the monitors and the printers from the office. And so after everyone came back to the office, it's like, well, there's no monitors in the office anymore. Where'd they go? We don't know. Somebody took them. Now, it wasn't theft, but it was, a work from home scenario.
Right. Interesting. Well, it's interesting because a few podcasts ago, I had Mr. Backup on about doing data backups, and the cybersecurity folks never talk to the data backup folks, but they really need to communicate much better. So one of the things I'm on a personal crusade is to help people break down the barriers, the silos between disciplines. So this sounds like a perfect example of low-hanging fruit for the cybersecurity and the ITAM folks to get together. Is that a good assessment?
Absolutely. And, backup is part of the responsibility of the ITAM team. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it goes back to you can't manage or protect what you don't know. The ITAM guys have been trying to track and manage all the assets in the company, both physical and virtual, hardware and software, for many, many years. There's a whole discipline around it. There's a whole methodology, and there's even an ISO certification for ITAM now, which is fairly new. It just came out last year. So yeah, it's ISO/IEC, which is a European equivalent, 19770-1. So it's all about the cybersecurity guys are buying software to try to discover all the assets in the company, and they're trying to find asset inventory lists and make sure that when they're doing a risk assessment and they're doing their risk management, which is it's a minute by minute activity. Security operations is kind of like network operations. They have to monitor events every minute. They have to know if something strange is happening. If all of a sudden a laptop has all kinds of strange traffic going on inside the company, it's probably been infected. And so they're monitoring and looking at things at that level. But then it's also I got a loaner laptop in the storeroom. Nobody's used it for 3 months. Oh yeah, here you go, Fred. Go take that and turn it on. As soon as he turns it on, if they hadn't done an update, it's going to have vulnerabilities. It's got holes because it hasn't been patched. And so that's where getting the security operations guys to get out of their silo. The silo was absolutely essential in the beginning, but it's more understood. It's industry maturity, which leads to consolidation, and you see it in every industry. Consolidation leads to better collaboration. You lean up the operations, you have less silos, and you have more of a common knowledge base. And it comes back to cybersecurity responsibility. If your laptop is being properly maintained by the ITAM team, then the security ops guys have less of a headache. So NIST is a framework. ISO 27001 is a certification. They all relate to each other. They all have overlap and commonality. And now what's coming out above and beyond that are things like the regulations. And so NIS2 is a EU-wide directive. NIS2 is regulatory legislation on what companies have to do. This is the minimum standard. And part of the reason they're doing this is things like infrastructure. There was the pipeline hack in Texas. The electricity grid has to be protected. So the regulation is coming into play, step one, for national infrastructure protection. But also these regulations apply to businesses. And what's really important is if you do business in the EU, NIS2 still applies to you.
So you're an Australian. Do you have anything similar to that applies in Australia?
There is a cybersecurity, a government cybersecurity organization. We have a framework called the Essential 8, which is it's another example, another flavor of NIST. That is one thing. While we're global and we travel around the world as individuals, we're still siloed in so many ways. Around the world, different organizations are trying to do the same thing. This is, again, over time, it should consolidate, because it's all about doing best practice and being cyber security responsible. There's regulation in Singapore. The Australian government's in the process of developing their regulations similar to NIS2. And the governments, at least, they are looking at what other governments are doing. So the followers are looking at what the leaders have done, and then they're adapting that to their local market and the local requirements.
And then you have organizations like like CISA here in the United States that I think is trying to work across organizations around the world to try to collaborate. Do you see that happening also?
Absolutely. Well, and NIST is a great example because the NIST catalog of CVEs, which are cybersecurity vulnerabilities, that is the global standard. So everyone's working, everyone from a security operations team, if you hear them talking about a CVE, that is a specific vulnerability that has been identified in a piece of hardware or in a piece of software. And so they're going to say, we need to know every machine that has this possible vulnerability because we need to patch it. And so that's where then again, SecOps is saying, we have all these vulnerabilities, we need to fix them. If they were talking and collaborating with the ITAM team, the ITAM team is the one that's typically responsible for patch management. So now if they, it's like, we've got these vulnerabilities, you guys need to go fix it. Don't just throw it over the wall. Okay, how many assets do we have? How long is it going to take to track them all down? With the SecOps team working with the ITAM team, we've got these vulnerabilities. These are critical. We have to patch it because this could expose us immediately. How many assets do we have? Where are they? How long will it take to track them down and actually get them patched? Because if you've got machines that people are working remote, you need to push patches to them. But some of the patches, if it's a BIOS issue, you can't push a BIOS patch. You have to have someone bring the machine in, and they have to actually, put a USB in, update the BIOS, etc. So it is a matter of risk assessment, helping the SecOps team knowing how big the risk is, but then you have an action plan of how you're going to fix it. I mean, cybersecurity responsibility before security operations was created as a standalone organization was an operational requirement. And there are other ISO certifications. So ISO certifications for operational excellence, the Six Sigma, which is about reducing defect levels, is again about operational excellence. So patching and managing assets has been something that every large organization has been doing for many, many years. For a smaller organization, you probably got that one poor IT guy who's trying to do it all himself. And that's where I think the SafeHouse Initiative hopefully helps the small and medium-sized organizations that don't have a SecOps team. They've got that one poor IT guy, or they've got quite often in a small organization, the financial officer ends up owning all this because it's part of operations. And obviously there's a cost involved. So helping to simplify it down to, well, at least look at a framework. And maybe you can't do all the framework, but at least do the basic parts. How are we tracking our assets? Are we patching them in a timely manner? Then the next step is looking at life cycle. What do we have that's going obsolete? Because especially in the small and medium organization, that budget planning is crucial because you can't have 15 laptops all go end of support at the same time and not have planned for it in advance.
This has been extremely enlightening, James. Any kind of final thoughts, recommendations, things that our listeners can take home and do tomorrow in their own operations?
And I think it just comes back to try to keep it simple. What can we do in a logical manner? Use the SafeHouse Initiative, use NIST, use any of these various frameworks, the Essential 8 in Australia. They're guidelines. Somebody needs to take a look at those or go ask for help because nonprofit organizations like SafeHouse can at least point you in the right direction. And from there, work out a basic, what can we do? How do we minimize our risk at whatever level of the company it is? And make sure that if you are in a larger organization, that you're talking to your counterpart. Don't let them live in a silo. Take them for a coffee or a beer or whatever, and say, hey, what's me? I always use this one. What's making you work overtime every night? They talk about in SecOps, the burnout factor is ridiculous. So you'll make a friend for life if you can help a guy in SecOps to do his job better.
Well, James, it's a real pleasure to discuss this and to learn from you. And I wish you all the best.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
A big thanks to James Hatcher of Lansweeper for his support and contribution to the SafeHouse Initiative. We greatly appreciate his vision and expertise in helping us to better understand the overall governance of our cybersecurity posture, one of the key NIST controls. That's our podcast for today. I'm Jeff Edwards for the SafeHouse Initiative. Thanks for joining us, and remember, be safe, be resilient, and be kind to each other. For more information on the SafeHouse Initiative, please use your mobile device to scan the QR code on the screen. Send us an email at safehouseinitiative.org@gmail.com or visit us on our website, safehouseinitiative.org. We look forward to hearing from you.